So much weird stuff has happened in the United States over the last year or so, whether it's the pandemic, whether it's the economy, whether it's, you know, January 6th, whether it's, we've had so much crazy stuff. Do you guys realize the government admitted to the existence of UFOs 6 months ago? And there's been no follow up since then. Uh, like,
No discussion.
no discussion because there's new news. Oh, by the way, there's aliens. And anyway, on to the weather. Jim Bob with the weather. How you doing? Uh, am I the only one that's like, I refresh every once in a while the news, expecting to see like a UFO update, or for maybe the president or vice president or a former person that's high up there, you know, somebody that's in the modern majestic 12 or some shit, to come forward and say, here's what we know about UFOs now, and the people deserve to know. It is easier to leak new information than it ever has been. You know,
Because
all the vice president has to do is go on TikTok. Kamala, you want to raise your approval rating? Do a TikTok dance confirming aliens exist and post it. What are we all waiting for? Where's the news?
I think it might be the fact that it feels like there's so much chaos that now it's like, okay, we can kind of start trickling this information in. We've known about aliens for forever, basically. So there's no aha moment, or I don't know, do the people who are really super into UFOs and aliens, are they like vindicated and feeling like satisfaction right now? Because my interest in aliens
No.
is, I don't talk about that very often, so I'm like interested to know.
Myth. We've been talking about climate change for like 2 decades, and it turns out that's real. You don't have any satisfaction. You're just like, we're gonna keep dying. We're gonna die. And the news comes out, we're gonna still die. But I'm morally superior. It's not that much of a satisfaction. And honestly, let me tell you this: the people in charge of the federal government have been talking about protecting people from Republicans for like 3 decades. They can't do it. Like nothing's happening.
Who was
At
the
least
president who said that like the only way to unite all of us was to have an alien enemy? Who was it? I think it was a Republican actually that said that. Who was it?
I think you're thinking of a character from Spider-Man. I don't know.
That no, that was real. What's fiction and what's real right now? I don't
That's
know.
a great question. I mean, that is the question that we're trying to get to the bottom of right now, actually. Yeah, I don't think alien people are vindicated as like I'm sort of like a alien people adjacent
Right.
kind of person myself.
Are you
Because
just interested, or are you
my
one of them?
dad's an alien person big time. And then my partner Ria is also really into talking about aliens and UFOs and stuff. And so I'm always around people that want to talk about it, and I have learned a lot about it in my lifetime. But it's not my favorite thing all the time, and I don't know how I always feel about it. But I will say this: I don't think that anyone's going to feel vindicated by this, because every few years something like this happens. Like the Canadian defense minister came out in like 2007, 2009, sometime around then, and was like, hey, aliens are real, UFOs are real. There's aliens that visit Earth regularly. There's 4 species that we know of that visit Earth regularly, and said all this crazy shit. And then everyone was just like, that sounds weird. And then no one talked about it ever again.
Imagine working your way all the way up to the top of the government. You find out about aliens, and Biden sits you down and it's just like, listen, Jack, nobody's going to believe you. And even if they do believe you, nobody's going to care. And in fact, you know what? I think the government admitted to the existence of aliens as a flex. I think that you guys have been chasing us around, filling our voicemail boxes. You've been messing with us for years. Look, we're going to just tell you, it's not like you can do anything about it.
Because time is also not real, what was the year that people stormed Roswell? Was that 2020?
Oh, God.
That was last year, right? Uh,
I don't know.
hold on, wait.
It was
Joe just came back.
2019.
Joe just came back. Joe's got the facts. Joe,
Yeah.
when did the Roswell storming happen?
Pretty sure it happened in 2019.
Oh, okay.
I could have
Okay.
been. I could be like wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was either the start of 2020 or 2019, and that's when COVID happened.
Had to be pre-COVID, let me tell you. Oh, by the way, maybe, yeah.
Wait, maybe it was early COVID though? I feel like it was.
Maybe.
I think it was one of those things that was planned pre-COVID and then happened early COVID. I think that's part of why it was such a flop, maybe.
So one, you've got the meme of like you've got a group and everybody's got their different role in the Roswell invasion plan. There are people who are gonna like run in screaming. There are people who are gonna be like, "You're gonna get shot." You know.
Yeah, somebody was going to get sacrificed
Yeah.
at some point.
Yeah. What really wows me out is just as soon as they stood up, as soon as they made that move, COVID, they just unleashed it. They said, "You've got to go back inside. We've
It's
got to
like
keep
the
you."
alien is COVID.
You know what? Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe the virus is a paranormal life form. Are we allowed to say the
Wait,
C word?
Are new alien variants going to start dropping? That's my other question.
Oh, God. No.
We've got
Government announces that not only are UFOs real, but Delta UFOs are real. What are Delta UFOs, you ask? Well, you'll find out soon.
You'll
I don't
find
wanna
out,
find out.
but you owe Moderna $50 a month starting this month. We'll tell you the details like in a year, okay? Just put your check in the mail.
Is that what that artist tax is?
Yeah.
Oh, God. I've been paying that for years.
We should probably introduce Myth, who has just been we just it's like that episode of Buffy where it's like, "Oh, you've got a sister now." Yes, and I've always been here. How's it going?
Excellent. Yeah, it's amazing that you mentioned Buffy because I fucking hate that show, and I hate her sister, Dawn, who was such a little shit the whole time, but like definitely the character that I resonated with the most as an annoying little sister character in my real life. So I'm good. It's solstice too, by the way. It's the shortest day of the year. And
We're having a spooky episode.
Ooh, squeeze in the spookiness. Yeah. So
it's the
I'm
beginning
good.
of Capricorn season. So Brandon and I are stoked, obviously.
That's right. We're all the way up over here.
I'm also a
My
Capricorn.
Aquarius ass is
Oh, snap.
in my mind.
Well, you are. That's great.
So I found out this year that I share a birthday not only with J.R.R. Tolkien and Greta Thunberg, but also that piece of shit, Kyle Rittenhouse. We all have the same birthday, January 3rd.
Oh no, Kyle Rittenhouse giving a bad name to Capricorns?
But like, I was thinking about this more, and it's like, there's literally like, 365 days a year. Of course, there's going to be somebody terrible born on the same day.
Think of all the people.
Everyone has a serial killer born on their birthday at this point.
But
we
I've
should
got
make a
serial
website for that. Who's the worst person born on your birthday? And you just plug in your birthday, and it's just like, oh, dang, I didn't even know that this guy existed, but he did like 7 genocides in the 1400s.
We should write this down and turn it into a segment. We could just do every day who's the worst person.
Ancestry.com, but it's your birthday.
I used to have this big book of birthdays when I was a kid, and that really like ignited my fire for knowing people's birthdays and trying to keep that information. Just, I needed to know for some reason to use it against them. But we see how the tables have turned.
You ever time up the times you have sex with somebody to make sure you don't have a Hitler baby?
What?
Sorry, the calendar here said
Oh,
you speed this forward 9 months and it might
I'm
not
not
work
thinking
out.
about that, but now I'm going to be thinking about it. What? Why would you say that?
I just
so.
listen, this is why they have No Nut November, so that you can't have a Hitler baby. Like it's
I don't know his birthday, but
How am
I
I
did.
scared when I have sex?
I have a Gemini child, so I think I've already. I don't know. I'm a Gemini rising as well, but yeah, I didn't think about that specific anxiety that I should add to my list of things to worry about
Well,
before.
Now you got to go
Well-
back and do months of star charting.
I am not an astrologer at all, and I find I have like a working understanding of astrology, but it's too much math for me. So, but I do know that I have Capricorn like in almost all of my houses. I'm just all goat and then a little bit of Leo and Gemini sprinkled on the side. So, you know, they say that there's no such thing as a bad birth chart, but I look at my birth chart and I'm like, bitch, this is cursed. Like, it's not, none of it is what I would have picked for myself, but whatever.
We got a lot of Capricorn energy here today. I'm Capricorn, Sun, Moon, and Rising. It's very cursed.
So welcome
Okay.
to Velvet Butcher Shop. On this show, we create new anxieties for our listeners and our guests.
And our hosts. My
Yeah.
God.
Yeah, Joe's diving into existential panic right there. Do you see the? Hold on.
Fucking
Look at his
crisis.
face right now. This is not a man who's doing well.
Welcome.
Too
Yeah,
awake.
that's us, the anxiety factory. Myth, we were way too
Anxiety
ADHD with this. I want you to introduce yourself and let people know how they can follow you and what your whole deal and backstory is. Like, take the floor and do all of that.
Okay, I love this. I never know what to say. I'm also ADHD. Hi, I'm Myth. You can find me on Twitter. I'm a mythic witch, where I talk a lot of shit, and I try to also talk about things that really matter. Sometimes. I'm on Instagram as Sleepy House Healing. My books are closed, but I give tarot readings, and normally you can find those at sleepyhousehealing.com. I just started a podcast. It's brand new. It's called Sleeping with Myth, and you can find it on, I think right now, just Anchor and Spotify. And what else? I'm also on Twitch, a Mythic Witch. You can basically find me anywhere under Sleepy House Healing or a Mythic Witch. And yeah, I don't know. I know how to like say what I do, but my backstory, let's see. What is my backstory? What's my like,
Why are you on social media? What got you into?
Yeah, what got you on Twitter? That's a good question.
oh fuck. Okay. So I got onto Twitter as a way when I started in OnlyFans in 2020. No, 2019. No, 2020. I started in OnlyFans and I wanted a place where nobody I actually knew could find me. And now I don't have an OnlyFans anymore, and I just am very much like all over the place on my Twitter. But that's how it started. I started networking to try to sell porn, to try to survive, basically. So, but I had a tarot practice before that, and so now that's the main thing that I'm on there for, which I don't know. I go from like shit posting to also trying to like genuinely promote my work, but I'm very ADHD. I have a hard time staying consistent with anything, like literally anything. So
Yeah.
I appreciate your Twitter feed because I have this problem where I will post an incredibly sad thought, an incredibly hilarious thought, an incredibly messed up thought, all in like 5 minutes of posting. And I'm just like, someone's going to look at all of these together and be like, what the
See,
fuck?
that's my biggest
But then I
fear
look at
is,
Myth
like,
posting and I'm like, yes, someone else who gets it.
I've seen that train of
Who has
thought.
the absurdity posting struggle. But your posts are great. I mean, it's kind of ironic to even think about your account starting out as like a little private nook now, because like you've done pretty well on Twitter, and like a lot of your posts really do the numbers because they're amazing.
oh, thanks. I feel like I make people mad a lot, and then like and then I have that, oh wait, was it me? Am I the dick? Was it me? And sometimes it was me. And sometimes somebody's really just mad about their own shit. Like I had that the other day
Yeah.
where I was like, y'all, what's your highlight of 2021? And somebody like told me I was a stupid idiot for asking that. And I'm like, listen, I stopped hating cilantro this year and I'm gonna fucking celebrate because that was really hard. you know, I mean, I get it. People had a bad year. Like I had a bad year. This shit sucked. But I don't
You had
know. It helps
you had
me to
yeah, listen, you had
hmm.
365 days. Everyone did. Somebody must have had something good happen to them at some point in this year, just
Nope.
mathematically speaking.
Not Joe, but the rest of us.
Joe, you must have
Well,
taken a really hard poop that made you feel relieved after you took it.
I'm an
Um,
Aquarius. I'm constantly depressed. I don't know what you want from me. Like,
yeah,
I'm Aquarius, rising, falling, and flat out.
is that a feature of Aquarian energy? I don't know about that. Is it? What's your rising and your moon? Do you know?
Both Aquarius.
Oh no,
Really?
Joe, you're all Aquarius?
Yeah, I'm full on Aquarius. Full
Oh
on raging
no.
Aquarius.
Why do we have such strong signs here today?
that's terrifying.
Why did we start a show together?
I don't know.
Well, I think it. No, I can answer this. My totally non-expert opinion. It's like so Aquarius, from my understanding, you care about community in the way of like connectivity. Like you do care about community, whether you like know that or not. But Capricorn, we feel like this weird like responsibility to community. And so together, you kind of I could see how you could maybe you have some of that community connection thing in common. But what do I know? I'm not an astrologer on purpose because math is
Well, I'm
fucking
taking this
stupid.
non-professional astrology reading as fact. Thank you very much. I'm gonna play the theme
How did
song.
Joe
This
get
is
kicked
Velvet
off the
Butcher
show?
Shop. We are a soft touch on hard subjects, or maybe it's the other way around. And we're
Yeah,
live Monday to
knows?
Friday most of the time. This holiday week, we're a little sporadic because there's a lot going on. But we're here today with Myth, and it's a total pleasure. So we'll be back in 60 seconds. And I was just thinking I should change my Twitter name to Kennedy T Capricorn.
Oh God.
Capricorn season.
Oh, I'm unmuted. Okay.
You know, I
So then when
already
you
posted a meme about this, but I feel like all Capricorns are like this. We're like, most of the year we're like, astrology is kind of whatever. It's interesting, but it's and then Capricorn season rolls around and we're like, Capricorn
This is what
time. Where
matters.
my
This is the
Capricorns
thing.
at?
Yeah,
Come
exactly.
on.
We get the next 30 days to just talk about well-laid plans and steady progress and all of the things that we love that just sound incredibly fucking and doing too much work for dipshits. Just all of our various traits here.
I think it's good to identify yourself as a Capricorn online because otherwise people will be like, why do you hate Capricorn so much? Like every time I make a shit post where I do, because sometimes I'll make shit posts where I write like all the signs and then I'll assign each sign. Like I did, my most recent one was couches. And I do like different random things where I will categorize it by sign. And every time someone's like, why do you hate Capricorns? And I'm like, it's because it's me, bitch. Like, I don't know what to say. Like, I'm just roasting myself. Like, I don't know.
You have to roast yourself a little sometimes, you know.
I think we as Capricorns need that a little, like a lot, because we can be very serious. I can at least be very serious to the point where I'm like, I don't know. I know that I have the ability to be fun, but I don't know that everyone else knows that. I don't know.
Anybody who says the
definitely-
phrase "I have the ability to be fun," that is
It's not
indeed
that I'm
the feeling
against
that I
having
possess.
fun.
I'm not against having fun.
I'm not naturally fun though. No, it's just the truth. Like, or maybe
I'm
I'm just
biologically capable of entertainment and joy.
I think I'm really hard on myself. And therefore sometimes I can be hard on other people, but I'm really working on being not so hard on myself and other people because it fucking sucks. So yeah.
Yeah.
Preaching to the choir on that one.
I saw a meme about Capricorns having resting serious face, and I was like, no, I'm fucking destroyed right now. Joe will all the time be like, "What's wrong, Kennedy?" While we're getting ready
Why
for
are
the
you
show,
sad?
and I'll just be sitting there, just like working on something. I'm like, "Oh, everything's fine," but I'm just sitting there, and my face is just like, and that's just like my resting face. It's just this like,
so mad.
Aww.
like.
They look so mad, and I don't know why. And I try and figure it out all the time because I'm an Aquarius, and I constantly need to be updated on emotions because I don't know what's going on with
You're
my
not
own
even the only
emotions.
person who does. Though people will like I'll just be sitting there, just like I'll be like literally tweeting a shit post, and I'll just be sitting there with my serious face, tweeting a shit post, and someone will walk in the room. Kennedy, what's wrong?
Oh, so I have that with reading where I'll make a sort of like people tell me it looks like disgusted face, and I'm like totally chilling, I'm fine. But enough people have brought that up to me. Like I used to get made fun of in school about it, where I like don't read around people anymore at all ever.
Oh
because,
no!
yeah, I do still read, but just not around anyone.
I read a lot. I read, stop signs, TV Guide. I read tweets.
I would hope you read stuff.
People say they don't read, but when you add up the volume of tweets from scrolling, your top 10% of Twitter users are just some of the most well-read people in the world. It's just ADHD reading. They're all short stories that are one paragraph long. And most of them are like, "My butt hurts, LMAO. You're telling me a shrimp fried this rice?"
And every version of that joke that people have created since.
Yes. Yeah.
This is not
I don't have to read because I took Joe Biden's advice, and I have a gramophone next to my bed.
Way to go.
Just
You're telling me Velvet butchered this shop? Doesn't make any sense. Do you guys want to get into the meat or the fungus of this shindig that we have going?
I am excited to talk about fungus because, as anybody who watches this show knows, we love some
fungus facts.
You all don't get the luxury of seeing this myth. Their face was completely just boggled as soon as we brought up the stinger. Eyes got big under the glasses. You look like Edna Mode from The Incredibles.
What's happening?
I told you we talk about mycology on this show like 2 to 3 times a week. It's mostly a show about like personal stuff and movies and things like that, but for some reason
I'm glad I brought up
It just happened.
fungi as
It
one
grew
of
on
my
us.
fungi. I'm glad I brought up mushrooms as one of my special interests because I love them and I hunt them every year. And every year I find somebody new and I get really excited. And
I'm
every
a
year
fun guy, so at any time you can.
come scoop you off of a log
Yeah,
and
exactly.
make you into chicken nuggets.
Right, exactly.
I
And
mean-
in a small dark container. A small-
Making
Yeah.
mushroom chicken nuggets?
Yeah,
but-
okay. I'm not a vegetarian at all. However, disclaimer, I will eat creatures, right? I'm not a purist in this way. I don't mind eating
Phrase it like that.
I don't mind eating animals, but I have cut back a lot. And every year
Creatures.
I will eat creatures. Well, creatures will also
This
eat
sounds like you
me.
have a cauldron in your garage.
You're picking up
Yeah.
kobolds and taking a bite out of them. Like, I don't really...
Unicorn, yeah. Sounds like you're a unicorn hunter. Once in a
Super-
while.
I feel like I am
Godzilla.
definitely the weirdest person on my street for sure, because all of my neighbors at this point, they are like, it's cool if you want to go in my backyard to look for plants and mushrooms, which is really nice. But my kid has like
That's-
no fear. He's just like wandering around. I'm like, dude, we still live by a busy highway, so like we can't just, I know we have permission, but we have to be careful still.
Yeah.
And permission is really important when it comes to mushrooms too, because there are deadly lookalikes, right? So the main mushrooms that the one that I made into chicken nuggets, and this is a yearly thing. We do it every year. We go to the same log. It's chicken of the woods, not to be confused with hen of the woods, right? Hen of the woods is the one that kind of looks like, you probably already know, but like crumpled up leaves, basically. Maitake, I think.
Yeah, maitake.
Anyway,
I eat those
yeah,
a lot. Delicious.
I love them, and they're very medicinal, but I don't usually find those. But I usually find chanterelles, and I find chicken of the woods, which is also known as sulfur shelf. And some of them, depending on what they're growing on, you probably don't want to eat that. You don't. It depends, right? So, but this is the same log, the same like old stump. Every year, it gives us a giant chicken of the woods, and then we make chicken nuggets every year, and it's so good. So even if you're somebody who like loves real chicken nuggets, I think that if you prepare it correctly, you can also enjoy this. And mushrooms are a big part of how I've cut back on creature eating. So we say it in the creepiest way possible. But I also have a lot of allergies and food sensitivities. So like eating mushrooms is kind of how I've like survived, and actually eaten some things that feel good to me. Because usually it's just like, oh, I wonder what my body can handle today, right? But like with mushrooms, I never have an issue. Yeah, I can't eat dairy and I can't eat gluten. So that's the reason I am not vegetarian. It's not because I like, I don't know.
Options thing then.
Yeah,
kind of.
I relate to that because I have severe digestive issues, and it's like I got to eat what I can. Okay,
right.
I just eat whatever.
But
I
yeah,
don't know what's
mushrooms
wrong
are
with me.
definitely usually a good choice. There's a lot of mushrooms that sit pretty easy. I will say as a warning for anyone out there that watches this, that if you eat too many of certain mushrooms, shiitakes being one of them in particular, they can kind of mess up your stomach. You need to balance those out. Don't eat shiitakes every single day. That's a Kennedy pro tip, fungus fact for the day.
Is this a fungus fact you had to learn the hard way?
No, it's something I was taught by like people who knew better.
I'm just
Some of them
imagining.
probably did learn the hard way.
I'm imagining a young Kennedy, like in your music era, just gobbling.
Consuming shiitakes
I can't
forever.
stop. I can't stop.
I can't stop this. Mom. Ow.
That I could see me doing that because I love mushrooms, and the rest of my family, my kid is kind of into them. Like he's really into finding them and then being like, I think it said we can take it. And I'm like, that's not really, if you want to take it and you think that that's why it said that, like, like I'm teaching him to actually communicate and talk to plants, not just be like, I want this, I'm going to pick it, which is, I know how that sounds to some people, right? Like I get that communicating with fungi and with plants, it sounds like cuckoo, but I kind of don't care anymore if it sounds cuckoo because it helps. There's so many lookalikes too, where it's like part of identification is just, it's there to keep us from like dying, right? When we forage. So
yeah.
I lean into that.
And it's also responsible foraging. Like, I mean,
right.
People can say what they want about the specific methods. I don't care. The results matter in this case, and that means like, responsible foraging is really important. A lot of mushrooms, one of the nice things about foraging mushrooms is that a lot of mushrooms, if you see them, they're done. They've already like finished their life cycle and spread their spores, and you can harvest that mushroom because it doesn't need to do anything else. But not all mushrooms are like that. And so it's
Okay.
important to know which ones that you could overharvest and just cause them to stop appearing in a place. And there's a lot of like really nice forageables like that. I don't know if where you are, you have ramps, but
Mhm.
like I used to live in North Carolina and harvest ramps a lot. And you really have to harvest those ramps carefully. If you hit a patch that's already too thin, you're just going to kill it and it's gone next year.
Yeah. I've never actually harvested them for this reason. I learned about how fragile they are, or not fragile, it's not really the right word because it's not them that are fragile. I've learned that people do tend to overharvest. So now if I found a giant patch of ramps, what I would probably do, I'd take like a leaf and then I would make like a seasoning salt blend out of it to preserve that flavor. So I get to have my little num nums, but I'm not fucking everything up for the ecology of that area. And so I try to take that idea into any foraging that I do. But luckily, where I forage, I'm the only one who does it or cares. And I get
Nice.
to, this is something that this is part of why I'm really passionate about everyone having access to secure housing, even though everybody needs that anyway. You can't really lay down your roots somewhere and get to know a plant without having, like, I get to meet the same holly bush every year for 5 years in a row. I really have a relationship with the plants around me that's not just me extracting something from them. And this is, I think that this expands way past like witchy stuff, right? I think that if we're foraging, we need to be communicating and building relationships, because that whole rule of like, oh, you only want to take this much of a plant, this much, whatever. It's like, okay, but if everybody does that and we don't come back and check in with that plant, if we don't really know the plant, then everybody takes, whatever, 1/5, 1/5, 1/5. We're still taking a lot over time if we're not knowing who else uses that land, who else comes to the area. I try to shift my language too away from using plants and more working with plants and making it this collaborative thing, because that's what I want, but I wasn't raised that way. So that's something I have to actually check in with myself about. And I was raised in like, gardens with a farmer dad and with like a witchy grandma who, we had our connections to plants, but it wasn't like this. Like, I
Yeah.
remember my dad's mom, my granny, she actually would rip thistles out of the ground and pour gasoline into the earth where they were.
Wow.
No.
So
Okay.
yeah, well, that's how
Right.
disconnected that she was from, like, because her mother was actually a forager. So when I'm foraging mushrooms and working with medicinal mushrooms, I'm actually reclaiming a part of my lineage that was broken. So that's
What
why
are
it's
Yeah,
important.
no, that's actually really important stuff. I think people don't realize enough that we had this generational information about like food in particular, like growing it, harvesting it, foraging it, preserving it, that got a lot of it has been lost because of the massive migration away from rural lifestyle that happened just a few generations ago. And in just a couple of generations, we've lost like 80-90% of the knowledge that we once had, to a large extent. And some of it's going to get lost forever if we don't work to reclaim it quickly. So I think that that's really important. I definitely want to highlight that. I
Yeah.
also want to say that I grew up in Ohio partially, for a decent portion of my childhood. If anyone notices how I shit post about Ohio all the time, and how much it sucks, there's a reason why. But one thing that was great there was the mushroom hunting. But I remember literally your story about the thistles got me thinking about, I used to mushroom hunt with these people that when they would find yellow jackets in their yard, they would pour gasoline in the hole and light it on fire.
Right.
And that's
As
how
if
disconnected they were. They were mushroom hunters, but they would also do that.
tell me
that's so wild.
Oh, and they were vegans. How's that for a trip?
Okay.
what
So
were
okay.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. No,
No,
go ahead. I'm here.
all right. Well, what were the books and people and experiences in your life that maybe changed your consciousness from the consciousness of your parents and grandparents to the ones that you have now?
So I think what had to happen is that I had to lose my whole entire shit. There's not a specific book that I can point anyone to. What had to happen was that I had to realize that, well, I guess the main thing that happened is I just started talking to plants, like straight up, just having one-on-one experiences. And I think the main part of like my awakening in this realm is that I was living in Portland, Oregon. I got pregnant and I was like, we can't afford to live here. So we moved back down to where I'm from. And there's been a lot with this homecoming. We've been here like 3 years now. And so I realized how many people here were disconnected from the earth when there is so much earth right here. I'm in a rural area. Like there's no reason for us to, well, there is a reason, right? There is a reason we got disconnected. And a lot of that has to do with, it has to do with racism, and it has to do with anti-indigenous, you know, like white supremacy. And that's in my lineage. It's in everybody down here has to deal with that. You know, everybody has to deal with white supremacy everywhere. But I just want to highlight that the reason this all got broken, it's not an accident. It wasn't like, oh, we just lost touch. Like, no, it was actually by design. Disconnecting people from the earth was it was on purpose, because then we have to be reliant on whatever gets handed from, you know, higher forces. But really it's like hierarchy, not a higher force, right? So it's very complicated too, I think, being a white person in this area and being, I don't want to just be like, well, I just know the secret. Everybody needs to listen to me and do what I say. Like, no, I want to encourage people here to get to know the land that they live on. And also with my social capital, encourage people with land to share that, to open it, to not just be like, oh, this is mine. Because there's a lot of people here, like landowners, that do that. And it's not helping anybody. And so we've got a lot of grassroots stuff happening here to reconnect people. But then of course a lot of us were brought up and told like, oh, don't eat that mushroom. This is like, everything's poisonous. Like, don't, you know, we're told that. And we have very real concerns about pollution where I live, because our city just dumped, like just totally poisoned our water supply, and then pretends like our tap water is safe. And like, I am not somebody who's like an alarmist kind of person. I really try to not, like, everything is not a conspiracy to me, but this is like, it's real, you know? So
small town tap water conspiracies usually turn out to be true, for the record.
Huge rate of cancer here, a huge rate that like our town, our city, like they take no responsibility. And they're like, oh, it's safe. And like, no, it is not safe. It is not safe. Even what they say, like when you look at like the levels of shit in our water, whatever is deemed as safe still isn't necessarily safe. So there's a lot of ways that people have been locked out of their own, I want to say medicine, but I don't want to sound like this is some woo-woo thing that's like inaccessible to people. It's actually accessible to literally everyone. If there's a dandelion like growing in the cracks in the sidewalk outside, like there is potential for land connection, like that everyone has. You don't have to be magical. You don't have to be, you know, like it's not some special thing that's only bestowed on certain people. So, but of course there's a lot of privilege involved in like, who has the time to talk to a plant, right? Like there's a lot of ways that people have been locked out of what I think is everyone's birthright, but especially people who've been locked out that are low income or, you know, less privileged. So.
Sounds like someone in the pocket of big wells.
Listen, all you gotta do, listen, you find your nearest tree, you break out your Calendly, you schedule a one-on-one, with that big oak tree across the street.
You gotta sync your Google Calendar with the trees in your neighborhood.
Yeah, sync your Google Calendar with your local trees.
It's so much easier. Like, actually, I feel like I struggle a lot with technology because I do feel like everything outside is so much more, it's so much easier to communicate with non-human beings. You don't have to find the right words, you know? I don't know. It feels much more natural, like literally. So
I think it's really important for people to have some understanding of this natural stuff too, because I think that there is this real serious disconnection, and I do like the mystical side of it, but even outside of that, like I think it's just really important that people. It's really easy to look at some of the objects that we have in our life, like fancy makeup palettes, for instance, that I have on my desk that look unbelievably like manufactured, and it's hard to see the natural origin of something like that. And then I think that makes it harder for people to understand the problem when they see like a patch of forest getting cut down, near their home, and then relate that to like, yeah, that means that all of the things that you want, like your smartphones, like all of these things will eventually be affected by this. Even if it doesn't seem obvious, even if it seems really, really disconnected, and I just wish that it was easier to help people understand that, because I think that is like an intentional way that power has been taken from us, is to make us not see that, like, yeah, everything comes from the natural world. It all starts there.
right. Well, I think of this example, and I'm going to be really careful with my words here, but I think of how my grandmothers were told that like breastfeeding was only for poor people. And even though they were poor people, they broke their necks trying to make sure they got formula for my mom. And then, so when I decided, okay, I'm going to do my best to nurse my baby, even though, mad respect to anybody feeding their baby any way that they can. There's nothing wrong with that. I want to be really clear that, like, I'm not judging. I was totally formula fed, right? Like, it's whatever. But I'm also really trying to reclaim this broken chain, right? Where
You've got somebody that's nursing and they're just looking down like pathetic.
yeah.
I mean, obviously, like from a woo-woo perspective, you channeling feeding your child into a form of self-loathing is just not a good psychological habit.
Yeah, well, there's this whole thing too where it's like, I mean, they have brainwashed us with this advertising bullshit so much. I mean, I start sounding like, like I don't know who I sound like. I'm gonna try to stop judging myself. But I do feel like I'm one of those people that, like, when I was younger, I'm like, what a fucking weirdo, worried about like XYZ. But no, really, I mean, we were taught, I think, just being assigned female at birth, we were taught so much shit about like acceptability and like what we're supposed to do and how to do this right. And I think with parenting is really when I lost my entire brain, fell out of my head onto the floor, metaphorically speaking, because I realized, well, so many things happened at once. I realized, like, holy shit, I made a person. Now I have to guide them through this fucking hellscape. And it wasn't even as hellish as it is now, or at least it didn't seem like it to me. But my whole world shifted. And it was around that time where I was like, wow, all the coping mechanisms I've ever used to deal with my anxiety and my ADHD, they just stopped working. So I had to figure out new ways of being. I didn't even know I was ADHD, which is so crazy because, like, looking back, I was the kid that was like chasing butterflies during the softball games and stuff. Like, I wasn't I wasn't really available to participate. I was just like somewhere else, but yeah, I don't mean to like bring everything back to like birth, nursing, plants, but that's, to me, that's like that kind of is everything, you know? It's like it comes back to like our first, like our foundation, you know, of like who we are and stuff. So anyway, hi.
No, I think all that's really legitimate, and I think I think that's a really interesting story about the formula and the breastfeeding in your family and the weird perception that was developed around that. And it's not that, again, it's not that feeding your baby formula is like a horrible thing necessarily, but it is interesting just that disconnect of why did they suddenly think that the natural thing of breastfeeding a child was terrible?
Yeah.
Right? Like what caused that perception? That is curious and like troubling, honestly, to
Yeah.
think
Well,
about.
yeah, well,
Um,
Nestle did that too. In I think it was a couple of countries in Africa, they told women there, or breastfeeding people, obviously, I don't know, told them like that it's healthier and safer, more sanitary to have formula. And so then babies literally starved because they craved profit so much that they just did not care that babies didn't get anything because they couldn't afford the formula long term. So I think it comes down to a lot of times companies want to sell us what they think is wrong, or what they convince us stuff is wrong with us, right? To sell
mhm,
us their shit, and they just don't care what happens otherwise.
yeah. And then they ban our medicine, Bionicle. But yeah, no, I do agree. I can't help myself but make jokes nonstop. But I honestly I do agree. Like there's a lot of really, like I said, we've been pushed away from this understanding that a lot of our grandparents and great grandparents and great great grandparents had of how to like live on and work with this planet. That a lot of them, I mean, they just had to have these skills. I mean, my great grandma, you know, she grew up with in a log cabin that did not have electricity,
Mhm.
right? Like because that was still not entirely uncommon in her generation.
Mhm.
And so you know, I don't think that you know, I don't know. I don't know exactly what I'm trying to say, but it's just like it just seems like, you know, there was all this stuff that she had to know to survive and to
Mhm.
like live that way. And so she was like an incredible gardener and all of these things, and it all came really natural to her. And then she just sort of died, not really passing that on, because in her mind, when her children went off to get jobs in the city, they were succeeding. They were off
Mhm.
to a better life. And it's hard to, I mean, it would be hard if you had grown up in that rough. And I grew up part of my childhood. We lived in a house that wasn't plumbed and stuff like that. So, like, I can speak slightly to the ideas of roughness. Not
Mhm.
the way my great grandma could, but
Right.
slightly. If you grew up that rough and then your child was off to the city to live in like a nice house in town with electricity and, you know, city water and all this stuff, you would see that as a victory, right?
Hmm.
How would you not?
Right. Did she hunt mushrooms?
You know, I assume great grandma hunted mushrooms, but I can't confirm that information. Unfortunately, I only knew her a teeny tiny bit when I was very young.
Mm.
But I know that she was definitely a forager.
That's
I
so
just
cool.
don't know what she foraged primarily, especially because she lived in Minnesota, and I don't even know what you forage there. I think it's like snow. You forage snow.
Collected. I only learned that my great grandmother collected mushrooms this past year, and I'm 30, so that wasn't shared with me until this year, and it was because I started asking and being annoying with my family, like, hey, can you tell me more about Helen, like her life, just because I knew that she had a rough life, you know, like the kind of rough that you're speaking to. And I think what happened with her was that she was like, when my granny got married to my grandfather, who's still alive, he would say things like, "Oh, she's gonna poison us with those mushrooms," or like, "Oh, she's like crazy." Like she was kind of put off as being this like weirdo, this crazy person, when really it's like actually Helen knew how to survive, and
Yeah.
I think that she didn't really get in her life, never got any kind of like credit for that, but there was a lot of trauma happening anyway with both of her parents and her, and then even my granny. She was I looking back, I realized, oh, she was a highly traumatized person, and so we always kind of assumed that she was just very shrill or very like trying to control everything. And it's like I look back and I'm like, was she also just ADHD and overstimulated all the time? Because I kind of get why Granny was screaming all the time. Everybody was acting like assholes. And she was overwhelmed by it, and didn't have maybe the coping mechanisms that I have now, which is send my entire family out of my house so I can record podcasts.
Yeah, I will say I am like 99.97% sure that my great grandma Vera had ADHD, because that woman did like everything every day. She did like 75 tasks a day, just like all kinds of random stuff. Just like she'd start the day out writing a few letters, and then, oh, I'm just gonna go to the hairdresser. I'm just gonna go do this. I was gonna just like running around doing all kinds of stuff, and I'm just like, she must have been I think, both in that like overstimulated and understimulated kind of way. Like I think she was the kind of person that like no one ever gave her an opportunity to really like pursue the kinds of things that would have kept her mind active enough, and so then she just filled it with like a million jillion random hobbies into her old age.
Intense.
I wanted to ask, actually, and this kind of ties in well, because I was thinking about this earlier. I wanted to go around with Yumi and Joe and ask how we all got into mushroom hunting.
Oh God.
So, Myth, how did you start hunting mushrooms?
I really just, as I was starting to forage, they naturally came up, and I was like, I'd always been told like, oh, these are poisonous, like don't eat them. And so for a while, nobody do this. I would literally just like, I would fuck around with plants and try things even if I didn't know what they were. Never do this ever. You could die, like literally you could die. But I did that for a while. And then with mushrooms, I was like, oh, I can't do that, because you're really, I think, meant to cook almost all, if not all mushrooms, you're meant to cook them to make them
Virtually
safe.
all.
Yeah, even if they're totally safe mushroom a lot of times. So really the mushroom part, but honestly, let me like rewind, because actually I remember being a kid, y'all. I wanted to hunt mushrooms as a kid, and I was in Girl Scouts of all things, and I would like be really interested in that, and they would be like, you're fucking weird, and they would like throw my collection of mushrooms away at Girl Scout camp. And I remember crying and being like, wow, no one can ever understand me. Now my mycology is like huge, and I I do feel a little satisfied, but there is also that little petty baby part of me that's like, I was into this my whole life, and everybody thought I was a weird kid, or knew I was a weird kid. But I'm getting back into it, and I'm really interested in mycofiltration because of the problem I told y'all about with my community and the water supply. I really want to like specialize and get deeper, so maybe I could create a way that we could have safe water, because mushrooms are like amazing. They can do so much more than I think we give them credit for. But anyway, how did you get into mushrooms?
I was actually really blessed because my dad got me into mushroom hunting at a really young age. And I don't know exactly how he got into it. I need to ask him now. How did he acquire this knowledge? Because he didn't get it from his parents. And yeah, I'll have to try to figure it. Now I'm really like, huh.
Maybe I wonder if he ate some mushrooms and they told him too, because that I know that happens to some people.
My dad did trip on psychedelics quite a lot of times in his youth. I'll just throw that out there. It's not a secret. But yeah, my dad and I in Ohio, we would hunt for morels primarily, which are wonderfully delicious mushrooms. Really, really good to eat, and absolutely one of the ones that if you see them, they've already sent their spores out. So you can just, if you find a patch of morels, you can harvest them like crazy and know they'll be there again next year. And
there are false morels, though.
There are false morels. You do have to learn. There's a few different ways to tell, including like the way that gills connect to the stem is like the most reliable one, I think, especially if you're uncertain. But really, if you get to know them, though, you'll be able to tell a false morel from a real morel just at a glance because they don't look the same. But that's after you hunt them for years. You'll just know.
I've still never found them, so I'm jelly.
Oh, they're so delicious, and they can be challenging to find. But if you find a spot where they happen, they will keep happening there. And also, you can propagate them. And also, as we talked about on the show, there is a group, and I think it was Denmark, that has successfully propagated them indoors after 2 decades of research.
Yeah, it's quite impressive.
Oh, Lord.
And
love
it's
it.
like a 90.
Yeah.
You said 75% like success rate or some shit.
Yeah, it was really high. It was very high, 75-80% success rate with that method, something like that. So they were I mean, the pictures were amazing, and they were clearly like forming a very complex substrate for them to grow in, even though it was indoors. It was a very interesting looking process. But yeah, so I was really blessed to get into it at a young age, and then I didn't really do it much for a while, especially because a lot of my life I've lived here in New Mexico, and I didn't think I could mushroom hunt here until a couple of years ago. And then I found out a couple of years ago that the Sandia Mountains here actually have an incredible variety of edible mushrooms. It's just that they're a little bit harder to find because it's a slightly drier mountain range. But if you look a lot, you will find amazing things, including my best find so far is I found a coral tooth lion's mane about this big, which is one of the most delicious. Oh, yeah, so good.
I've grown them.
Lion's mane.
And I can make them. I do eat them in like crab cakes, right? But lion's mane cakes, and they're really good.
Damn.
And I do.
That sounds good as fuck.
It's so good. Well, and I am so not a chef, but my husband cooks them for us. He doesn't like mushrooms either, which is so sad. He doesn't like a lot of the, like, he's a very plain eater, and I respect it. I get it. But it's like, but then he's gifted with like being a great cook. And so he cooks mushrooms for me. But you can also grow them and make them into medicine. And it is, the reason I got into lion's mane is because we have Alzheimer's and dementia in my family, and it supposedly helps you with elasticity in your whatever those little, I totally lost the words, but neuroplasticity, is that what I'm trying to say?
Synapses, yeah, neuroplasticity is the word you're looking for.
Help, I need a nerd to talk for me. A nerdier nerd, but yeah,
I will say for the record that there are legitimate studies that lion's mane, reishi, and others can help with traumatic brain injury and other things. So
supposed to be very helpful.
There's definitely the neuroplasticity is real.
Yeah. Very cool.
Very cool. Joe, how did you start hunting mushrooms?
I was born in Oregon, so like it's kind of just I was pretty avid in the outdoors when I was younger. I did a lot of fishing on my own, a lot of just hiking and stuff. And I still kind of do that from time to time. I mostly do fishing. I don't hike as much as I should with like the environment that we have out here. but I've been living in Oregon for 20 some odd years, and like I've just gotten to know the wilderness a little bit more, and I got more involved in mushrooms, hunting mushrooms. I sold some mushrooms at some point, not psychedelics, but like just mushrooms to a local farmer's market. I would do that for a little bit, make some extra money. And that was fun, but like I haven't really I've hunted maybe like mainly boletes, like king boletes, and like that's the mushroom I know the best. Whereas like if I was to hunt morels, fuck, I'd get lost. There's certain places you're not supposed to go when you're hunting mushrooms. Like there's people out here who guard their property or their mushroom hunting patch pretty like violently. You don't really want to run across them, or you stumble into like I've stumbled into like a marijuana grow a couple times and been like, oh, there's a guy with a gun. I'm gonna go. Yeah, this is
Yeah,
not the place I
I've
wanna
found
be.
a backwoods marijuana grow when hiking before. If you hike enough, you're gonna find one. Let me just
Yeah,
tell you.
you'll accidentally stumble upon one and you'd be like, oh, I need to go. Like,
Listen, this is how it starts. You start communing with the earth, then you start going on walks, then you start finding the grow huts buried in the back of your forests.
Yeah.
It all starts with Google Calendar. You've got to hold the money, you got to hold on to it. Otherwise, you're going to be stone cold sober for way longer than you have to be. Listen to what we're telling you here.
hell, Brandon, that hurt me.
This has been a fun show. Myth, thank you so much for making this a wonderful mushroom chat, bringing so much
Yeah,
great
I'm sorry
energy to the show today. I mean, we talked about a lot more than mushrooms, obviously, but
Thanks for
Sorry I
having
was a
me.
little late.
I can really just talk forever about the stuff I'm interested in. So thanks for letting me come and just chit chat about mushrooms. I think it's interesting too how we all have a different like favorite or a different mushroom that we feel more connected to. Like I didn't even know that bolete was called that. I thought it was called bolette because I've never even found that before. So like I think that's an interesting
I
little
think it's a different pronunciation.
yeah, I think it can be pronounced a
each
few
person.
ways. I
Like,
will
I don't-
say too.
I
I
don't
call
know
them
that
bolete.
mushroom. So it's
They're just
cool.
like they're fat little phallic things.
You've
Yeah.
probably
That's most mushrooms,
seen
actually. Now that I think about it, Shit.
you've probably
I
seen some boletes somewhere, but not necessarily the edible ones because they grow
think
everywhere. But a lot of times you'll find
found
these
them.
highly toxic ones.
I'm gonna share with you before I go with the big mushroom. So when I was a kid, like I remember in my nana's garden, I found a giant mushroom. It was like I felt like it was me sized. I'm sure that it wasn't because I was just a kid, but it felt like it was me sized. And I remember one day just opening it to be like, what's in here? And it was just I would check on it every day and it was just this yellow ooze coming out. And I think that might have been I don't know if that really happened, but in my memory, there was a mushroom my size. I was probably like way too young to be outside, like just by myself doing stuff, like 4 or 5. But I was that child, so maybe I
Yellow ooze
yeah.
coming out of a mushroom.
Over time, that's what happened because I busted it to be like, who are you? You know.
Oh, okay. Okay, I see what you're saying. I was like, why don't eat that? Please tell me you didn't
No,
What
eat
did
that.
it look like? What was its like shape and color?
Was that shape. It was like to me, it was in the same shape as the bolete that you were talking about. And so I don't know if that's what it was. I don't know if
Was it red?
I was so little. I
Okay.
really just remember that
'Cause
when I
my
would check
guess-
What would be leaking?
My guess
Scaring me.
is that it's a king stropharia because those can
check.
get huge. And
yeah.
so if you were a kid and they can just grow in a garden just completely at random.
That's what happened.
Yeah.
Yes.
In a garden with healthy soils, king stropharia could just happen. And so king stropharia can get massive for a mushroom, like really big.
I'm gonna check in on this now. Thank you for uncovering this because I totally like for some reason.
Oh, what? What just happened?
Oh no, technical difficulties.
Listen, as soon as you shared the truth about the mushrooms, the government just
The
came
government's shutting this shit down.
Gotta
Big
go.
mushroom shut us down.
6 months ago, the government revealed that mushrooms are real. And no one is talking about it except this show,
more of us
Velvet
talking about
Butcher
this?
Shop.
That's right. We take a hard touch on mushrooms.
What? What is this tagline changing? I'm so confused.
This is Velvet Butcher Shop. We're live Monday to Friday at 1 Eastern. I don't know if Myth's going to make it back, but I will do their promo for them. You can find Myth on Twitter at A Mythic Witch, on Instagram at Sleepy House Healing. You can support them by going to patreon.com/Sleepy House Healing if you like the work that they do. And again, they do tarot readings and stuff like that. The books are not open right now, but go check it out anyway because you want to
get on the mailing list.
Get on the list.
Yeah.
Also, there's reasons to be a patron aside from just personal readings. So I hope that was a decent plug, Myth. If you see this later.
All right.
And we'll refilm it.
If you want to support this show, like, subscribe, etc. Head on over to Patreon or Ko-fi.com/Velvet Butcher Shop if you want to throw us a few bucks. Every dollar you give us goes directly to making the show better. And we appreciate y'all, and we'll see you maybe not tomorrow. We're going to come back at least one more time this week. It's the holiday week. Like we said, everything's kind of wacky.
Yeah.
Maybe Thursday, something. Maybe I don't know.
But happy holidays regardless.
But happy holidays regardless, y'all. And we'll be back on our normal schedule next week.
That's right. Bye-bye.
Bye.